Hi, my name's Verity Jones and I'm one of the authors of the Opening Doors to a Richer English Curriculum with Bob Cox and Leah Crawford. In this session, I'll be taking a unit of work called That's Disgusting from our book for 6 to 9-year-olds. The key concepts that we'll be looking at is how we can build opinion and choose vocabulary. So when I say that's disgusting, really what I want us to think about is food. We're going to get into literature through food because everyone's got an opinion about what they like to eat and what they don't like to eat. I want us to think particularly today about butter. Do you like butter on toast and crumpets and tea cakes? Do you like bread and butter pudding? Do you despise the way that butter can drip off something, or is that the most delicious thing that you can think of? Have a think of some really interesting adjectives that you could use to describe butter. Certainly, I'm not that keen. My grandma used to give me balls of butter if I had a sore throat, and I tell you what, it could really put you off. So pause, have a think, and jot down some words. Now you've got this list of adjectives, what I'd like you to do is sort them into positive and negative words. If you haven't got a great selection of words, then you might want to think about using an online thesaurus to try and expand your vocabulary. Always try to use the words in a sentence so that you get a feel for how the words can be used. Have a go. If you've got time, now might be a great opportunity to actually make some butter. It's really simple. All you need is an electric mixer, some whipping cream and a sieve. There's plenty of online examples of how to do this, but basically you just mix that whipping cream up until magically it suddenly all comes together to make some butter. You'll notice that there's some watery substance comes out of it, and you can sieve this away and be left with some delicious butter. If you can't make it, then have a look online and see if you can watch somebody else make it. It really is like magic. Having thought about butter and perhaps even made some butter, what I'd like us to do now is read about butter. This extract is taken from The American Women's Home, written by sisters Catherine Beecher and Harriet Beecher Stowe. It was written back in the 1800s. Let's read it together. The process of making good butter is a very simple one. To keep the cream in a perfectly pure, cool atmosphere, to churn while it is yet sweet, to work out the buttermilk thoroughly, and to add salt with such discretion as not to ruin the fine, delicate flavour of the fresh cream. All this is quite simple, so simple that one wonders at thousands and millions of pounds of butter yearly manufactured, which is merely a hobgoblin bewitchment of cream into foul and loathsome poisons. You turn from your dreadful half slice of bread, which fills your mouth with bitterness, to your beefsteak, which proves virulent with the same poison. You think to take refuge in vegetable diet, and find the butter in the string beans, and polluting the innocence of early peas. It is in the corn, in the succotash, in the squash. The beets swim in it, the onions have it poured over them. Hungry and miserable, you think to solace yourself at the dessert, but the pastry is cursed, the cake is acrid with the same plague. You are ready to howl with despair. Have another read through this extract and pick out any words that are used and any techniques that are used that you can spot that really brings out that idea of despair and disgust. Pause and have a think. Here, I've highlighted some of the words that really look at how great butter is. We've got sweet, fine, delicate, and fresh. Added to this In the second paragraph, we're collecting different sorts of words. We've got dreadful, bitterness, virulent, poison, polluting, miserable, cursed, acrid, plague. All of these are really negative words. We've got a collection of adjectives, really well chosen verbs like polluting, and comparisons. The writer saying, with the same plague. All of this together creates a set of related words known as the semantic field, and this is a technique used very cleverly by writers to keep a certain image persistent in readers' minds. It creates a desired emotive exaggeration. Now, all of the time in the first paragraph, we're thinking about the loveliness of butter, and then in the second paragraph, the awfulness of butter. So, did you manage to spot those words? Did you spot how the paragraphs were contrasting, showing the simplicity of the food in the first paragraph and then details of disaster in the second paragraph? That comparison really shifts and highlights how awful the butter was. Did you notice how the description really built up the detail of the disasters? And the narrative voice was directed at you, demanding you empathise with the situation. So far, we've thought about butter and we've read about butter. Some of you may have even made some butter. Now it's time to have a go at being a food reviewer yourself. You might already watch British Bake Off and other baking series on television. If not, you could have a look and see if you can watch some extracts of how some of the expert chefs review some of the less expert chefs on their food. Have a go at reviewing some food. Perhaps take your favourite food, or perhaps a food that you don't like at all, and write about it in the style of Catherine and Harriet Beecher. Florence in Year 3 wrote of her outrage at the ruination of some raspberries. Here's what she had to say. Unfortunately, a lot of people do not prepare raspberries well. You go to the table and expect a lovely bowl of ripe, juicy fruit. Here, she uses that very positive start that we saw in the earlier extract, but she goes on to say, but instead, get revolting raspberries shriveled up. You feel disgusted. Hopefully, you can see some of the techniques and language that have been lifted from the earlier extract and put in to this one. How about you have a go? Now you've done a little bit of writing, perhaps you want to write some more. There's lots of ideas about how you could write about food. And one way is perhaps to write the end of a story. H.G. Wells in Food of the Gods introduces us to a mysterious medicine that makes things ever so big. Some of this medicine, this special potion, has been given to some chickens, and the chickens have got enormous and have escaped from the farm. This is what happens. The chief immediate reaction of this astonishing eruption of gigantic poultry upon the human mind was to arouse an extraordinary passion to whoop and run and throw things, and in quite a little time almost all the available manhood of Hicklebows and several ladies were out with a remarkable assortment of flappish and wangable articles in hand to commence the scooting of the giant hens. They drove them into Earshot, where there was a rural fete, and Earshot took them as the crowning glory of a happy day. They began to be shot at near Findon beaches, but at first only with a rook rifle. Of course, birds of that size could absorb an unlimited quantity of small shot without inconvenience. I really like the idea of these massive chickens running around, and unfortunately people did shoot them. But what would happen if we then had to cook these enormous chickens. Why don't you have a go and perhaps create either the next part of the story where somebody's tasting these enormous chickens after they've been cooked, or create a review just like we've seen in the earlier extracts. Remember when you're writing to try and create a sense of disgust or enticement through the vocabulary you choose. Build up a detail of the disasters or the desirability of the meal. Think about the narrative voice and directing it to you, which demands you empathise with the situation. And perhaps try out writing those contrasting paragraphs where simplicity or complexity are mirrored with failure or success. So once again, pause and have a go. Bob, Leah and myself all think that reading is really important so you can start to see connections between different stories. We call this linked reading, and there's lots of examples where opinion is being made all about food. So you could just dip into Alice in Wonderland and review the tea time treats of the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. Or perhaps think about Oliver Twist. Can you imagine being desperate with hunger and reckless with misery? What would you dream of eating? Cold jelly and custard or something else? Dip into these great stories or try and find other connections with other things that you read. I do hope you enjoyed the activities in this unit. Don't forget there's lots more detail and links to other reading activities in the books.